want an encore!
Okay, I really don't agree with the implication of, well, that intro, but I couldn't resist.
Hello, my fellow hunters, and welcome today as we crown the official best Monster Hunter game. At least according to you. Yes, you. All of you. See, I wonder which Monster Hunter game you imagined when I just said the best one. I imagine a lot of you imagine the same one, but let's get into this, shall we? So, I asked you all two big, massive, huge questions. The first of which was to give some context here, and it was, which generation of Monster Hunter did you start playing? First, second, third, fourth, or fifth? And well, tens of thousands of you replied, which, by the way, thank you very much. And the results, well, came out as follows. 8% in the first. This is interesting, because it's much higher than I expected, as Monster Hunter back then, hell, even in the second gen too, was relatively unknown. It was kind of a niche game that was very good, but didn't have that kind of broad appeal. Try was when it first got its big initial surge of popularity. Of course, a second much bigger boom followed with World, but 8% is quite cool. Second gen, very similar, 9%, so a good smattering of people. For me, obviously I started with literally the first Monster Hunter, but it was the second gen that saw me put thousands of hours in, Freedom Unite being my baby. My baby unite. Look, I don't know why I made a box when I made a game box cry. The third gen then, as I just implied it would, has that first little boom. 25% of you are try-babies. And that is quite interesting to me because, well, it means that a huge chunk of Monster Hunters only experience Monster Hunter for the first time with underwater combat. So that was your normal. I'm so sorry. No, I jest. I actually think water combat is a lot of fun, and it was hampered by the controls and technical limitations of the time, and if it was done now with World's fidelity, with maybe Rise's fluidity, it would be something special. Then the fourth gen takes a little bit of a dip with only 16% of you starting to play in it, which is surprising because For You is still held by many to be, well, the best game, but we'll get to that. And then finally the fifth, World Iceborne Rise, as you might imagine, a whopping 41%. Yeah, that's pretty damn ridiculous. So most people are indeed fifth fleeters. So with that in mind then, let's see what the best Monster Hunter game is according to, well, as I said, all of you. Though first, I want to take you over to something I did when I told all of you my personal favorite Monster Hunter games like 2.5 years ago now. That shook out like this. Try coming in at fourth, with For You at third, World at second, and Monster Hunter 1 at first. Now, this was before Iceborne, and honestly, this list isn't the worst. I mean, I would probably change it to this, as I think it much more accurately represents a nice mixture of both quality of game and, of course, the nostalgia when you look at something like the original Monster Hunter, which I still think deserves a lot of praise. And yes, it might be cheap to tie Freedom Unite and Try, but, you know, I can't help myself. And besides, today is not about me. So without further ado, let's get to it and find out what you guys think the best Monster Hunter game is. I gave you a choice of 5, and I thought these 5 best represented the 5 that would top the list if everything was an option, but I had to choose 5 because 5's the most options you can put in one of these little polls, so where possible, I did use the ultimate version, as although there is arguments to be made along the lines of World's better than Iceborne because the Clutch Claw is awful, and the Clutch Claw is awful. As an entire package, I think it's hard to argue that Iceborne isn't the superior, more complete experience if you take nostalgia goggles off. So, coming in at number 5, with just 4% of the vote, is Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate. And this one immediately fascinates me because, obviously, the second largest group of you started with the 3rd gen, started with Try and then went on to Ultimate. But despite that, other Monster Hunters since then have proved superior. And on one hand, that feels intuitively correct, right? Because you would hope and expect for the games to get better as time goes along, as they learn and make new and improve. Yeah, okay, the older you go, the worse it should be. But at the same time, Monster Hunter tends to be quite special to each individual person, each hunter. And by that I mean the first Monster Hunter you play. Your favorite flagship tends to be the one of your first game. Your favorite village tends to be the one in your first game. But your first game itself, at least here, is not your favorite game. And that's quite, well, surprising to me. Though then again, it is the underwater combat, so perhaps everyone experienced it, was like, yeah, I like hunting monsters, not sure I feel about water, it's a bit weird. Then they played a 4th gen game and went, oh, okay, this is where it's at, my god, alright, oh ho ho! And I could totally see that happening. But yeah, it is very, very curious to see so much of a disparity between people who started in the 3rd gen and people who still prefer the 3rd gen above all the others. I at least am happy 3 Ultimate got some votes as Brachydios' introductory game, but yeah, there you go, that's our little taste to begin with. Then we move on to 4th place, and this is where things get certainly weird. This is where I'm like, I'm not sure I agree. But with 11% of the vote, Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate.
Inconceivable!
And this is heresy! 4 Ultimate is arguably the best Monster Hunter game still to this day, which I guess is the whole point of this entire experiment discussion. But what I'm saying is, it's like a masterpiece. The Gormagala storyline with the Frenzy Virus was one of the best and first times they introduced an actual storyline. The monsters in it were fantastic. We got the snakes, and we got the amphibians, we got the insects. That was really, really badass. We got some of the most memorable moments. We got bloody Apex Rajang repeatedly punching our faces off. We got Gogmazios of all things. I have thousands and thousands of hours in 4 Ultimate, and I am very shocked that it came in 4th place. I mean, I guess 4 for 4 is quite appropriate, but I really expected this to do more. What I am going to take from this is that, as we saw, a lot of people didn't start in the 4th gen, and I'd imagine that the amount of people that have played 4 Ultimate is not equal to its quality. I'd assume that if everyone who has played World in Iceborne had first played 4 Ultimate, this would be at least 20% plus of the vote. And it kind of makes me sad for it, because I really do think 4 Ultimate is something special. But there you go, here it is coming 4th. And then 3rd place, and this is, well, curious too, also with 11%, but tiny bit more, Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate. And I kind of hate this. I don't hate Gen Ult, I love Gen Ult, of course I do, but I feel like it's hard to argue it's better than 4 Ultimate. 4 Ultimate has one hell of an endgame, it's just got a more interesting experience. Yes, Hunter arts and styles and deviants were over the top and cool and just crazy and never before seen. But, really? Over 4 Ultimate? I mean, it's so close, which means the 4th gen itself is really split. These are the 2 big games of the 4th gen, so which one actually takes it on top is very cool to see, that it is so evenly matched. People not quite able to decide, and I mean, I do get it. Generations Ultimate is this big celebration of everything that is Monster Hunter, with nearly every monster in the series packed into it in one eclectic huntathon that just doesn't stop, and progressing the deviants was really satisfying and challenging. Atal Ka was a wonderful climax to the whole affair, and just, it was, well, fun. It was fun. That's what Generations Ultimate was. It was Monster Hunter with the fun brakes fully off. And it just went for it, and it did it well. I'd say that Generations Ultimate is the probably more pure, ridiculously entertaining experience, but I think 4 Ultimate is the more Monster Hunter one. So this being this close is very, very cool. Coming up then at second place is Rise with 12%. Just that tiny bit more. And this is kind of sad to see. On one hand, it's nice because it means that they're still making, you know, good Monster Hunter games. And they are. Look, make no mistake, Rise is a fantastic game. It's also a high-rank game competing with G-rank games here. So the fact it's even, well, in second is fantastic. But the combat in Rise is, I still think, the best combat that's ever been in Monster Hunter. It is fast, it is fluid, it is fun, it is exhilarating, it's just... oh, it is on point. And Rise combat taken to other settings would be just phenomenal. In fact, Rise's mobility aerially, the general flow of it is one thing that makes me have hope for potential future underwater combat returning, because it proves they could really make it actually, you know, not feel horribly sluggish. So that's really nice and heartening to know. But at the same time, and yes, the updates or the lack thereof is a factor. Of course it is. It's left people a bit soured because people want more. But we've already got hundreds to thousands hours out of Rise. You don't need more. We want more. But we want more because we love it so much. So we're sad that there isn't more, and that sadness kind of turns to disappointment, kind of turns to perhaps frustration, and then kind of, well, ruins your opinion just a little bit, tarnishes it of the game itself. But there's no denying the base, complete package that is Rise, in my opinion, is the best high-rank game ever. It's lacking in a satisfying endgame, sure, but I still to this day have not had more fun going from making my hunter to finishing the final boss than I have in Rise, and that's really saying something. But the fact that so many people think that Gen Ult and 4 Ultimate is essentially as good is really, really telling. There's probably a healthy dose of nostalgia, sure, but at the same time, you'd expect Rise to smash it. Though, this to me implies that Rise Ultimate, or whatever it's called, will smash it. There's only a few things that need addressing, a few things that need tweaking, and I think all this does, over anything negatively, is prove that Rise is the foundation for something very special, that it is competing with such honored, loved, and perfect entries into the Monster Hunter series. So that's second place, Rise. And then first, as you might, you know, shockingly imagine, is Monster Hunter World Iceborne with an ungodly 61% of the vote. What can I say? This is the perfect storm. It is the Monster Hunter that put Monster Hunter on the map. It is the Monster Hunter that by far and away the most people have started with. 41% in fact. It is the Monster Hunter that did everything right. It got the environments, the beauty, the ecology, the nature right. It did, at the time, the best combat Monster Hunter it ever had. At the time, the best story, in fact, probably still the best story that Monster Hunter has ever had. It brought it to the West in a way that was so impactful yet still so authentically Monster Hunter, and it really was the best of everything. The clutch claw in Iceborne is the only real mark of shame. Other than that, every single element of these games is, I truly believe, as close to a masterpiece as you can get. Monster Hunter World and Monster Hunter World Iceborne are truly special experiences, and it's no wonder people look at them even now already fondly as nostalgia when in the face of Rise. And they've not been, well, that long. It's only like a year to 3 that World and Iceborne were our mainstay, but still we miss them. We miss them so much because there really was something special. I feel like with World and Iceborne, it's one of those things where you don't realize just how good you had it until it's gone, and despite it not being gone, it never feels the same knowing the Monster Hunter you're playing isn't the most current one. It's still fun, it's still good to go back to, but not being literally the most current one does make it ring slightly hollower than it used to. But despite that, World and Iceborne is a titan. And every monster introduced was fantastic. Nergigante is a glorious flagship. Everything was designed so well, and yeah, it might be here because most people started Monster Hunter with it, but it deserves to be here because I think if you're going to look completely objectively at the whole package, it's hard to argue that World in Iceborne isn't the best Monster Hunter game ever made. And there we have it. That is the People's Champion. So, what do you think? Do you agree? Are you like, okay, yeah? Or are you fuming? Do you think Freedom Unite should have in fact come out of nowhere and won? Maybe. Let me know your thoughts. But until next time, like you've enjoyed this, subscribe for more. Please consider supporting the future of the channel on Patreon down below. And until we meet again, a goodbye.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.